Hello everybody. We will now discuss about the basic building blocks of any object-oriented programming language. There are two basic building blocks, namely the object and class. So now we are going to discuss in detail about what is an object, what are its examples, what is a class and how to define a class and how to write a simple program in Java using class. What is an object? To define what an object is, anything that we see in the real world with our eyes, anything that we can visually see, we can call it as an object, which means any real world entity is an object. So to understand it better, let's see a few examples of what an object is. A car is an object. A cat is an object. A laptop is an object. A pencil is an object and a table is an object. So each one of these are all real world entities. Each one we can term it as an object. So to go to the next level, we need to know what are the characteristics of an object. That is, if we take any real world object or real world entity, a real world object is capable of exhibiting two characteristics. What are they? The two characteristics are, number one, state of an object, and number two, behavior of an object. So what do we mean by the state and what do we mean by behavior? Let us take an example. Let us take the same car as an example. Now, if we take our object as the car, to understand what is meant by the state of a car, let me give a few examples. Now, if you look at this car has a color. This car has a particular model and this car runs with a particular speed. So, I can group all these as the state of a car. That is, color is a state, speed is a state, model is a state. So all these in the object-oriented programming world, it is called as the variables. So color, speed, model of the car is termed as the variables. Now what do we mean by behavior? How does a car behave? The car can start, we can stop the car can move, we can turn, and then as well the car can be reversed. So these are all the different ways in which a car behaves. So now to list it out, the behavior of the car: start, stop, move, turn, and reverse. All these are now called as the methods in the object-oriented programming world. So I hope you clearly understand what is now meant by the variables and what is meant by methods. So variables correspond to the state of the object and methods correspond to the behavior of an object. Now let's go on further to understand what a class is. What is a class? Now we saw what an object is. We said car is an object, cat is an object, table is an object. Now if you take for example a car has got different models. Say we have the Maruti car, we have a Hyundai. In Hyundai, you have different models again. i10 is there, i20 is there. In Maruti, you have Zen is there, Alto is there. Then you have the Swift, Desire. So different kinds of models of the car are available. So now to define what a class is, what I will do is I will group all these objects which are having similar properties and behavior into one unit, and that unit I will call as a class. Right? So now let's see the proper definition of what a class is. A class is a collection of objects having similar properties and behavior. When I say properties, it's nothing but it refers to the state. So any object two or more objects having similar properties and behavior can be grouped under the heading class. So now, for example, if you want to understand, let's take dog and let's take car. Now again, if we take the dog as a class and car as a class, if we take the first, say, dog as a class, we have different breeds of dog available. We have a German Shepherd, a Pomeranian, a Labrador, a pug, a dog. So many different breeds are there. So all of them will be having similar properties and behavior. So I will group all these different dogs into one single class called as dog. So all these different kinds of breeds of dog will come under the class called dog. Similarly, we have different cars available. So we will group all the different cars into one single category, which I call as a car. So that is what is meant by a class, a collection of objects having similar properties and behavior. So now I hope you understood what an object is and what a class is. Now let's move further. Let's see how to declare a class. Okay, how to define a class. You have to use the keyword class followed by the name of the class. Now, for example, I want to define a class called dog. So what are the different properties or variables that I can give for a dog? A dog has a breed, an age, a color. So all these I will call as the variables. Let me now assign color to the dog. So I use a method called as set color, and then I give some color to the dog. This is the behavior of the dog, right? So breed, age, color are the members or the variables. Okay, data members or variables of the dog, and I have this void set color, right? This is the method. This is exhibiting the behavior of the dog. So there is a syntax to be followed for declaring a class. How do we declare a class? You use the keyword class followed by the name of the class. So now I am giving the name of the class as dog. Always remember, the class name should begin with a capital letter, and then you open the parenthesis and then keep listing out all the variables of that particular class. Now I've got three variables here: breed, age, and color. So the type of breed is string, age is an integer variable, and color again is a string variable. So I have listed out all the variables. Now I am going to list out the methods. I am just given only one single method. I want to give a color to the particular dog. So I give the method declaration along with the definition. Now this is very similar to how you define functions in C. That's how you define methods in Java, right? You have to give the return type. Here the return type is void. Give the name of the method. The name of the method I've given here is set color, and then with arguments or without arguments, here it is taking one string variable as the argument, and whatever you want your function to do, you write it within the parenthesis, right? And then you close your class. This is how you define a class in Java. Now to go another step further, let me now summarize what an object is. Now we saw in detail about an object. Let's try to define object in different ways. The first one is an object is a real world entity. Second one is an object is a runtime entity. The third one is an object is an entity which has two characteristics, state and behavior. And finally, I define an object as an instance of a class, which means I can only allow objects to interact with. Okay, when I declare a class, I need to create an instance of a class, right? And then I can only make the interaction possible through objects. The object interaction only is possible. So once we declare a class, an instance of a class must be created, which you call as an object. So these are the various definitions of an object. Now let me summarize about a class. What are the different ways in which we can define a class? A class is a group of objects which have common properties. It is a template or blueprint from which objects are created. This is what I told you. So if we want to create an object, first we will have to declare a class, and then only we will be able to create objects. It is a logical entity, okay, whereas an object is a runtime entity. And finally, a class cannot be physical. So these are the various points with which I summarize what an object is and what a class is. Now let's move on to a very simple program in Java. Right? Let's try to declare a class called student with two variables, ID and name. And then let's have two methods, one for reading the input and one for displaying the output. And let's see how to invoke these methods by writing a simple program in Java. So first I'm going to define a class called a student. So this is a comment statement, this double slash. Now to define a class called student, I use the keyword class and then I give the name of the class. See, the name of the class begins with a capital S, right? Now I open the bracket. The first thing is I said we are going to have two variables. One is ID and the other is name. So I'm now going to define the way the fields or data members or variables, whatever you call, it's all the same. I'm going to define them. So ID is an integer variable, so I declare it as int ID. See, whatever variables we define in a class, you have other names. You can call them as data members, you can call them as instance variables. The second variable that I wanted to create is name, which is of type string. So I say string name. Then I'm now going to declare a method. The method which I'm going to define is I said one method for reading the input and another method for displaying the output. So I give the name of the method as reading, and then what I say is I assign values. I say ID is 10 and name is ABC. Now I'm going to write a method for displaying the output, which I call as display. So whenever we want to send output to the monitor, right, when we want to display it on our display device, in Java we use system.out.println. So I say system.out.println s1.id, and then plus is the concatenation operator. I give a space and then I say s1.name. So what is this s1? This s1 I will be defining in my main method. That is, I will create an object and then I will invoke the methods through the object. So let's see how it is done. Now I'm going to write my main method. So I'm writing my main method within the class student itself. So how do we write the main method? We have to use the standard format, public static void main string args within the parenthesis, and we open the bracket. Now the first thing is before I start doing my various activities with the two methods, I have to first create the object. Object is nothing but instance of the class. So how do we create an object? Just give the name of the class followed by any name for the object. So any name in meaning you can that is, here I am giving the name as S1. Okay, so I say student S1. S1 is the name of the object. Then I use the new operator and then I create an instance of the class student. So this will help me to create an instance of the class. It's nothing but it will help me to create the object S1. Okay, now I have created. My next step is to assign values to the various variables by invoking a particular method. So remember, we wrote two methods. One method was called as reading. Reading is where I am assigning values. So how do we invoke the method? Invoking a method is done through the membership operator, namely the dot operator. See, you have a dot here. This is how you do it. That is, you have to give the object name, dot, and then the method name. This is how you call a method. Like how you call functions in C. When we in C, we just give the name of the function. Here, we invoke the methods through the object that we have created. So the object that we have created is S1. So through the object S1, I am invoking the method called reading. So when it is called, immediately id S1 dot id will take the value 10 and S1 dot name will take the value ABC. Next is I need to display the values. So how do I display the values? Again, I have written a separate method called display for printing the value. So I invoke it. How will we invoke it? We will invoke it by saying s1 dot display. So when I do this, I will be able to get the output 10 ABC. So this is how we write a very simple program in Java for creating a student class and for reading and printing the two variables, namely the ID and name of the student, by creating an object in the main method. So I hope you are able to understand. So we will now go on to in my next video, we will have a better explanation of what other constructors are. Like how do we create constructors, how do we use them in our program. So this is what we will do in our next video. So thank you and have a great learning.